Good morning, Arun Patel, sir.
Good morning, everybody. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yes,
fine.
sir.
To all the participants, let me have a brief introduction of Dr. Patel. Dr. Rajesh Patel is working as Additional Director, School of Engineering, Institute of Technology, Nirma University. He has an experience of more than 27 years in the field of teaching, research, and industry. He obtained his BE degree in Mechanical Engineering from REC Surat in 1990. Dr. Patel obtained ME degree in Turbo Machines from REC Surat in 1994 and PhD degree from IIT Bombay in 2007. He served as head of Mechanical Engineering Department from June 2011 to August 2017. He has published more than 18 research papers in reputed journals in the domains of renewable energy, energy conservation, energy management, energy policy, supercritical fluid extraction, etc. He has contributed more than 80 research papers in international conferences. The research contribution of Dr. Patel can be quantified by the H index of 14 and I-10 index of 20. He has successfully completed 3 research projects funded by DST and Gujarat in the area of biomass gasification, alternate fuels for IC engine, and small hydropower. He also has one US patent and one Indian patent to his credit. He has guided more than 66 PG dissertations and 4 PhD scholars. The IST National Award, Charutar Vidya Mandal, Vallabh Vidyanagar, Gujarat-based Engineering College Teacher Award for Gujarat State for the year 2010 was conferred on him. He is also awarded IST GSFC National Award for guiding best STEM Tech thesis in mechanical engineering for the year 2011. He has served as the member of Board of Studies and Faculty of Technology and Engineering of MS University Baroda and PDPU Gandhinagar. He is also the member of Governing Council at Ganpat University Mehsana. Dr. Patel is the reviewer of international referred journals in the field of renewable energy, energy management, etc. He is actively involved in consultancy research and testing in the area of mechanical engineering. His areas of research interest include renewable energy, biofuels, biomass gasification, supercritical fluid extraction, etc. We are very much thankful to Dr. Patel for sharing his valuable time. Dr. Patel, we welcome you all and please start your session. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dhruv, for brief introduction. So at the outset, I welcome all the participants on my talk, Energy Conservation in Thermal Utilities. It's a part of SCTP, Energy Conservation and Renewable Energy for Sustainable Development. So at the outset, I must congratulate Lee Engineering College and in particular Professor Bhatt to organize this particular SCTP. And it's a really say in line with the present day context. Today we are struggling with both energy as well as say sustainability both. So I'm sure that at the end of this particular SCTP, all participants will get benefit, and all the issues addressed and discussed during this SCTP will be beneficial to them for their academic activities, as well as if they are into research in renewable energy, it will be helpful and useful. See, my talk will be divided into two parts. First, I'll talk about the general energy issues, mostly in Indian context, and of late I'll discuss basically the how we can go for the conservation in thermal utilities, typically in pump, compressor, and boiler. Same principle holds true for other utilities as well. So before we start the topic, we have to address several issues. So before we jump into the energy conservation, so we must know what is electricity bill of our house, how much we pay for the electricity at our workplace, what is the fuel mileage of our car, the energy consumption of our domestic appliances, and what appliances in our house or workplace consumes the maximum energy. How is the energy wasted in our workplace and other places as well. So if we address all these issues, we can get the insight that what is energy conservation, what we really need to do to conserve the energy, and what is typical say, book definition of energy conservation. So we know, see, energy is the basic input for all activities, be it say cooking, transportation, entertainment, agriculture, comfort, even R&D, power plants, industries, right? So in our day-to-day life from morning to evening, right, we consume energy in say different activities and different domain as well. So typically, see, as far as the conservation is concerned, we need to first map out how much energy is being consumed in all these activities, and how can we really curtail the energy without compromising the basic needs and basic comfort, right? So that will address and that will give us the insight for a conservation. Of course, as far as the renewable part is concerned, I'll get back to you in the later slides. See, this is all about our conventional energy sources. So we use coal, oil, natural gas, petroleum products, thorium, uranium, etc. to produce electricity.
Sir,
Yeah.
sorry to interrupt you. I
Hmm.
think the slideshow is not being shared. We are seeing the first slide only.
Oh my God. Let me check again.
And it is not in full screen, so we are seeing a short, small slide only.
Uh, is it now
Yes.
visible?
Yes, sir.
Huh?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Now
We are
it
on
is
the
full.
slide. We are on the slide. Do you know the electricity bill? And now it is changing. Yes.
Okay,
Yes. Yes.
so
Now we are on
let
the
me brief.
first
Okay,
slide.
so
Yes.
what I discuss is about this, that we use energy in our day-to-day activities, and we need to map out how much energy is being used in each activity and how can we reduce the energy consumption as far as the conservation is concerned. And I was on this slide that typically, see, today we get our mostly energy from the non-conventional sources, be it oil, coal, or natural gas. Over and above, we use uranium, thorium, etc. to get the electricity. Actually, પછી હમણાં મને 12:30 સુધી કોઈને આવવા નહીં દેતા અંદર 12:30 સુધીમાં. So here if you see, typically say we have oil, coal and natural gas as the main source of energy. And if we see the life, the left out life which is estimated through various models, for coal is 100 years, for oil is 30 years, right? And same is for gas. Now, surprisingly, these numbers are static. However, this basically it should be dynamic. And if I give you say the number when I studied this course for very first time in 1986, when I was pursuing my UG, same number were taught by my teacher that coal will last for 100 years, oil for 30 years, gas for 30 years. So if it had been 30 years in 1986, probably today we should not have oil or natural gas. But essentially, see, these numbers are predicted on the basis of several assumptions, and typically, see, we do not look at what are the other say parallel sources from where we get the energy, or what will be the future source of energy. So basically, in consideration with that, this number will be dynamic. So today, suppose say coal is 100 years and oil 30 years, probably say after 30 years, the number will be same, right? Because say now the pressure on oil will reduce because of now we are switching over to electrical vehicles. Coal is being used for thermal power station. But now, as we see the mandate of Ministry of Power, if you read the power policy of India, now we envisage more power from renewables. Say by 2030, we expect that 30% of total generation through renewables. Today, if you see, it is less than 20%. So when we switch over from non-renewable source to renewable sources, obviously the burden on this non-renewable source will decrease, and typically the life may be same after say 30 years, 40 years as well. So typically see the numbers actually gives us the indication that yes, these are depletable energy sources, and we need to find out the physical alternatives for oil, coal, and natural gas. As far as the pattern of energy consumption is concerned, see all across the world, it is same that typically 75% of energy resources are being consumed by 25% of richer class. Rest 75% of population is deprived of energy. So over and above, say when we talk about conservation and renewable, we also should look into the sustainability as well. So here the sustainability is being addressed. We have to balance the see this energy availability to the common man, so that every individual gets the equal opportunity to have the energy. On world front, if we see if you see the total energy consumption by the developed countries is much higher as compared to developing countries. I will discuss that number later on. But just to give you indication that our per capita electricity consumption is about say 1200 to 1300 kilowatt hour per person. If you find same say in terms of US citizen or Canadian citizen, it may be about 20,000. So it is even say more than 10 times. So the say 75-25 rule is also that holds applicable, right, to these developing and developed countries as well. Next issue, what we address that say typically in order to grow any country, it has to increase its energy consumption. So we need to find out the different ways, different opportunity from where we'll get the energy. So on one side, it is energy crisis, and if you get rid of this energy crisis, you will get into the environmental crisis. So it's a twinning issue that in order to get rid of one, say we are jumping, or rather we are getting the problem in the other thing. So we need to balance between the energy consumption and environmental degradation at the same time as well. So most of the environmental problems are related to energy utilization, and reducing energy consumption will certainly reduce our environmental problem to a larger extent. So if you can solve, right, your energy requirement, at least say 25% of the energy requirement by energy conservation or by reducing the energy consumption, probably we may issue the environmental problem to a larger extent. I'll give you simple say example. There was an article 3 days back in Gujarat Samachar, and it was cited that the total carbon emission of the world has been reduced by 240 crore metric ton this year compared to 2019. Obviously, if you see the pattern over the past 10 years, so this number has increased, and this increase is at the rate of 7%. But say because of this corona pandemic, the total energy consumption has gone down. And if you see this number today, in comparison to last year, it has gone down by almost 7%. So it's if you see 7% increase every year, and this time it is 7% reduction. So ideally, it has been 14% reduction in comparison to the previous years. If we see the total amount of carbon dioxide emitted every year, so in 2019, it was about 3640 crore ton carbon emission at world level, and out of which China contributed about 28%, US 15%, European Union 8%, and if we talk about India, it is only 7%. Looking to the fact that we are as far as the population is concerned, if you see our population is about 132 crore in comparison to US population, which is 32 crore. But if we see the carbon emission, our contribution is 7%, vis-a-vis to US emission as 15%. China unfortunately pollutes the maximum. It is polluting double than US and 4 times than India every year. If we see the carbon emission per second at world level, it is about 1,000 ton. So you can imagine that, see now the issue of this environment is much bigger or much larger as compared to the issue of the energy. So if you solve one issue, probably you will jump into the other. So only option is the conservation. By conserving the energy, right, you can solve both, that your energy demands are also set off, and at the same time we are not polluting the environment. So development of the nation is measured in terms of per capita energy consumption, whether we believe it or not, or rather say it is true or false. But obviously, in order to grow, right, in order to be in the developed countries list, you need to consume a lot of energy, because say unless you consume energy, say development is not possible. Any developmental activity ultimately leads to energy consumption. So more is the energy consumption, more means country is more developed, will be using more energy, will be polluting more as well. So, on the contrary, if you see the total contribution of this carbon emission, right, I would say 75% is from developed countries. hardly say 25% is the contribution, real contribution of the developing or underdeveloped countries. So to increase per capita energy consumption, we'll have to be prepared to manage the related pollution issues as well, right? Which is also increasing proportionately. So now say here we'll try to define the energy conservation. So first myth is say energy conservation should not be considered as curtailment of energy use. Right? Simply if my energy consumption is 1500 kilowatt hour per year, if I reduce it to 700, it is not conservation. Conservation is really meaningful if you are not compromising on the services. So suppose if you have 4 tube light in a room and if you reduce it from 4 to 2, it is curtailment, it is not conservation. Rather say you need to maintain the total lumens of that particular workspace, right? With other alternative which are consuming less energy is really energy conservation. So here we need to define the energy conservation as the minimization of wastage of the energy resources and maximization of the productivity of the available energy resources. So it will ultimately leads to profitability for the nation, and obviously it is a social obligation. So we need to, for betterment of society also, we need to conserve the energy. Now we can conserve the energy by the energy efficient practices, energy efficient technologies. We can conserve by reducing the waste and use of alternate energy sources. So these are the 4 ways by which we can conserve the energy, and we can also address the pollution and environmental issues. If we see the energy efficiency, generation is lagging behind requirement. That is, in Indian context, if you see, still we have peak deficit of electricity of about 15%. Base deficit is about 7 to 9%. So still you will have the frequent power cuts in the villages. You don't have electricity access 24 hours. Farmers are having only electricity access for 8 hours. So even though we say Gujarat is an energy surplus state, but if we really look into the energy demand by the farmers, still as on date also it is not set off. So our generation is much less as compared to our requirement. Depletion of natural resources and are not renewable, that still we depend mainly, says our electricity 75% comes from the conventional route. Whenever 1 unit of electricity is consumed, 1 kg of coal is being used. So it is, say by thumb rule, I can say that every unit of electricity generation requires 1 kg of coal. And if you generate 1 kilowatt hour or 1 unit of electricity, typically we degrade the environment by 1 kg of CO2. So it is in hand to hand, that is 1 unit requires 1 kg of coal, which pollutes environment to the extent of 1 kg of CO2. So the environmental conditions are becoming worse and worse every year. On the other hand, if you save 1 unit of electricity, right, so it is as good as say saving 2 unit at generation end, because mostly our electricity comes from thermal route. Thermal power plant efficiency is about 25 to 30%, right? So if I save 1 unit, I can say that at the say input end, you are saving to the extent of equivalent to 2.5 to 3 unit. Over and above, our say transmission distribution losses are much higher in Indian context. If you see our average T&D loss is about 16 to 18%. Auxiliary power consumption of power plant is about 5%. So put together it is 22, 23%. So out of 100 unit produced at power plant end, only you can get 75 unit at the consumer end. So if I need 1 unit at consumer end, probably say I need to produce 1.25 times at the power plant end. So which requires say additional say capacity built up as far as the thermal power station or other power stations are concerned, and a lot of investment is required. So it is highly cost effective. Say I'll give you a number. Say if you want to have a new power plant, thermal power plant, at least it will take 4 to 5 years to construct, right? So you will get the benefit of any power plant which is going to be constructed, right, or which is decided to be constructed after 4 to 5 years. While as far as the saving benefits are concerned, they are immediately. So if you save the electricity immediately, you can save, or rather you are getting the benefit as on time. As far as cost is concerned, the power plant cost in today's context is about 5 to 7 crore per megawatt. So if you want to install 1000 megawatt capacity power plant, you need to invest about 7,000 crore. And this 7,000 crore today will become about say your discount rate as 10%. If you calculate this 7,000 in today's context, maybe about say 11-12,000 after 4 years. So lot of investment is required. Saving cost, yes, when we talk about the conservation, right, you need to improve the efficiency of the machines, and that will not be at free of cost. We need to invest, we need to put money, right? Sometimes we need to retrofit the existing setup. So yes, it is not at free of cost, but if you compare the cost of saving opportunity, that cost is much less as compared to the investment what we are going to make for creating the new infrastructure as far as the power plants are concerned. So we have seen the benefits of the conservation. Then what are the barriers? Why we are not say still we are struggling, right, to percolate this particular issue in the society? One is the lack of awareness, education and training. So we need to have the more sessions, right? Even say it is difficult to educate the engineers. So understand how difficult it is to educate the common people. So there are several say market distortions, economic distortions, lack of standardization. Of late now we have started labeling the equipment as far as your AC and refrigerators are concerned. Now we have 3-star, 5-star rated air conditioner or say refrigerator. But this kind of say rating should be available for say majority or most of our electrical appliances. Lack of financing, lack of effective coordination. These are the several say barriers to energy conservation or energy efficiency. And most important is the feeling that everything possible has been done. Now there is no more opportunity to increase the energy efficiency, right? So that feeling has to go out if we really want to move out of the barriers of the energy efficiency. Every day and anything is a small step towards increasing the efficiency will ultimately lead to the energy conservation. So a mistaken feeling that energy monitoring and energy reduction equipment are expensive, that is also should be removed. So as I told you that it is not at free of cost. Some cost is involved, but if you see the cost benefit, cost and benefit is much more as compared to the cost, right? So I can compare, I either say saving 1000 megawatt electricity or equivalent installation of new thermal power plant. And you can, if you compare the cost, right, going for new installation, maybe I will say about 100 times costlier as compared to going for the conservation approach. So as far as say Indian scenario is concerned, now if I talk, our energy intensity is poor as compared to the developed country. Some numbers are cited over here. So as far as India is concerned, energy intensity, which is energy required to generate 1 unit of GDP, right? So in energy intensity definition is the amount of energy required to generate one unit of GDP. So lower is the number, better is the scenario. That I am, see, my number is less, energy intensity is less, I can say that I am using less energy to generate same unit of GDP. So if you see here, we are consuming 3.7 times more than that of Japan, 1.4 times more than that of Asia, and 1.5 times more than that of USA. So our energy intensity needs to be improved, and we can improve the energy intensity by two ways. Either you can increase the energy efficiency of the existing equipment, or you need to find out from where your GDP comes, right? See, being agriculture based country, our GDP mostly comes from agriculture. So if you compare the country where the GDP mainly or majority portion of GDP comes from service industry, their energy intensity would be better, because in service industry you need a room, you need a space, computer, right, and electricity, that's all. If your GDP comes from manufacturing sector, your energy intensity will be poor as compared to the service sector, that you need to operate your machines, right? So energy goes into operating the machines, and that consumes a lot of energy. So energy intensity will be more in case of the country where say major chunk of GDP comes from manufacturing sector. So this is one side, but yeah. Hello.
அப்ப கிட்டத்தட்ட 80 லட்சம் ஒயிட் மணி ரெடி பண்ணனும்.
No sir, you continue. It is.
Can you mute the
10 ஏக்கர் 10 லட்சம் அதோட வேல்யூஷன்.
I may request all participants to mute their audio.
பேசுங்க please.
So which this indicates that the high wastage of energy at the same time a very high energy saving potential as well. So so if your energy intensity is high, right, that means there is a larger potential for energy saving as well. So we can take that thing as positive, that we have a lot of energy saving potential. And as I said, the power cuts are frequent. Here we have 13% of peak shortage and 8% of average shortage as far as India is concerned. We are the second most populous country in the world, and we grow at the annual rate of 2%. Say this is also very important because say as population of the country increases, we need to increase our energy generation capacity as well. So, and since the population is large, our per capita energy consumption is less. So it is 1200 kilowatt hour per person per year in comparison to 2000 kilowatt hour per person in China and 14,000 units for USA. We are the sixth largest energy consumer in the world, and we expect our GDP to be grow at the rate of 7%. No doubt, of let's say this year our GDP is negative, but if you take the GDP growth from 2001 to 2020, so average growth is about 6 to 7%. So as say as per a definition of energy intensity, if your GDP grows, you need to also grow your energy availability as well. So in line with the GDP, say if you have the energy intensity number available with you, you can find out how much energy is required and what will be the growth rate required for the energy as well as far as the nation is concerned. So government has taken several steps. Since every 5-year plan, there is a separate section for the energy as well, and the Ministry of Power takes care of that. So all energy options are to be exercised to take care of the increased energy demand. However, in our context, coal has remained the mainstream energy source as of now and in future also. Say till say 2030 or 2035. I expect that coal will be the major energy source in power generation. Government has focused that now new power plant may be either nuclear based or renewable energy based. So much emphasis is now given on nuclear and renewable energy as well. And as far as hydro is concerned, most of the energy has been trapped, and by year 2025, the goal of ministry is to tap almost 100% power from hydro. So hydro will be mature by 2025. 15% saving is to be achieved by energy conservation. So our energy demand is growing, right? And typically suppose say our energy requirement in next 10 years or 8 to 10 years increases by almost say 70 to 80%. It is believed that whatever is the total generation capacity by 2035, we need to add same number, right? So 100% increase is expected by year 2035, out of which 15%, at least if we can contribute to the energy conservation, then there will be a reduction in the burden as far as the generation of electricity through thermal or other routes is concerned. It is also envisages that government, as per government plan, to provide electricity to all households and to shift more efficient fuel, that is LPG, for cooking for the household in next 5-year plan. So this is typically the energy vision of Government of India for next 5 years. Now, what is the solution? So we must use all available fuel options, be it nuclear, non-conventional source under comprehensive NEP. There must be say pursuit of improving energy efficiency at all stages, not only say at our consumer end, but at generation and also transmission end, because as I said, our transmission distribution losses are 16 to 20%. If you see the same number for the developed country, it is hardly 3 to 5%. So we need to improve our transmission line. We need to improve the efficiency of the generation machines. And not only that, we also need to improve the efficiency of the machines at the consumer end. So it is believed that 2.5 units of capacity addition may be avoided if you typically say save 1 unit of electricity by any of these means. Investment in energy efficiency measures, cost effective and sustainable. Improving energy efficiency would be the most effective method to tackle the shortfall and sustain the country's growth trajectory. And it is also far less expensive to save the energy than to generate new power. And doing this, we can save almost $1,200 million every year for India. The conservation potential is estimated about 25% of the existing generation that we have discussed, that in time to come, say we need to improve upon our energy generation capacity. But if we go for the energy conservation, at least 25% of total new generation capacity can be reduced. Now, having discussed about the energy conservation and its other issues, now let us focus on how to conserve the energy in our thermal utilities. So here I will discuss first pump, then compressor, and finally we will have the discussion on boiler. Before we start discussing energy conservation in pump, we need to understand the pump characteristics. So this particular graph indicates the head versus discharge, power versus discharge, and efficiency versus discharge characteristics. Now here, if you see the total, the efficiency increases, right, as I increase the capacity or the discharge, but it will reach to a maximum and then it will drop. This is the typical efficiency curve. Mean to say that suppose say for a given pump, if my discharge requirement reduces from say 4000 LPM to 2000 LPM, right, and if I'm using the throttling mode, then my efficiency of the system will decrease from typically 82% to the tune of 60% or 65%. So there is a efficiency, large efficiency drop, right, if you operate your pump at part load efficiency. If I increase the capacity, obviously the head will decrease because total power is rho J QH. Rho G is constant, so if I increase Q, H is obviously will decrease, right? So depending upon our head requirement, we need to choose a pump from the pump characteristics that at given discharge it has to satisfy the given head requirement as well. Power increases with the increase in capacity, that is but natural. So this, if you just go through whatever I have discussed, right? So last point indicate that pump efficiency with flow decreases. That maximum efficiency is significant with respect to maximum efficiency, and which is significant as compared to motor. Motor, say part load efficiency is good, but in case of pump, part load efficiency is very poor. So if I operate my pump at 50% flow rate, then efficiency will drop by 20%, right? So there is a straight reduction in efficiency, and this decrease in efficiency, that is 20% decrease in efficiency straight away, meaning that you are consuming almost say 20% more power, right, to operate the pump. However, if your efficiency is not decreased, then typically you can save the power. So that gives you the energy saving opportunity in case of pump. I need to operate my pump in such a way that even if my discharge requirement decreases, the efficiency should not fall. However, we have discussed that through pump characteristic that for a given speed, if pump rotates at a given speed, right, if I decrease the discharge by throttling it, the efficiency has to decrease, right? That is the negative part. So we need to identify, or we need to find out the ways where I can reduce the discharge at the same time my efficiency of the pump will not decrease. The other characteristics which is very important is that at zero load also pump consumes almost 30 to 40% of power. Wherein say if motor is say operated at no load condition, the total power required to operate the motor will be 5% of the full load. So motor is not the culprit. As far as the pump motor system is concerned, if I talk system as a whole, right? So motor is not the culprit, pump is real culprit, where we need to work on that how we can increase the efficiency of pump. Hardly you can increase the efficiency of motor. So in actual flow in a pumping system, right, we rather than talking about the pump characteristics, we should address the system characteristics. So here both characteristics are shown. This red color indicates your pump characteristics, the head versus discharge. While if you see the system blue color pump, right, blue color line, so at zero load, the head is almost 30, which is the static head. So when you throttle it, right, or rather say, when you increase the flow rate, the system head increases, and that increase in the system head will be the square of the velocity. That we know the frictional head, if total head, if I talk about, will be the sum of the static head plus frictional head, and frictional head by Darcy's formula 4FL V square by 2GD is a proportional to the square of the velocity. So if, more flow in the same cross section means more velocity. So if you increase the capacity, obviously frictional head will increase, and the intersection of pump and system characteristics will give you the best efficiency point. So if you plot your efficiency curve, probably you will get the maximum efficiency at that point. This gives you the typically it is the centrifugal pump characteristics, right, for the given model and given condition. So all this typical this line indicate the head versus discharge characteristics at different RPM. And if you rotate your pump at different RPM, obviously you need different power. So I could say that this is also a power versus discharge characteristics curve, and these parabolic curves are your constant efficiency or ISO efficiency curve. So if you have all these three information, you can find out the best of operating range, right? If suppose say my requirement is suppose say 150 gallon per minute or about say 35 meter cube per hour, right? So you can get that combination at various say this rotational speed. If you operate your pump at 25 HP, right, and getting that particular thing, obviously head will be more, but we are not required that. Suppose my head requirement is only 100 meter. So rather than operating at that particular point, this point, I can choose to operate my pump at suppose a 7.5 HP line, right, or this particular speed, so that the total power requirement will be less. So it will be more and clearly visible over here. So here only I have taken the one reference pump characteristics, right, and one reference system characteristics. Let us assume that I am operating my pump at this. So at present my flow requirement is 12,000 liters per minute. Now if I want to have 12,000 liters per minute, and if I am operating over here, the efficiency is about 86%. Now suddenly suppose your flow requirement reduces from 12,000 to suppose say 9,000. So one way is to throttle your pump, right? So in that case, say you will operate the throttle valve. So rather you are restricting the flow, but your pump may operate at the same speed. So in that case, it will follow your pump characteristics will be the blue line. So from this reference point, operating point, now I'm shifting my operating point at this end. And at this point, suppose if you have the ISO efficiency curve that is corresponding to 84%. So again, if I want to find out how much total power is used, your area under head discharge characteristics, right, will give you the total amount of power. So this ultimately see this rectangle, right, if you find out this area of this rectangle will be the amount of say energy required, right, to operate my pump at this head and this discharge combination. Now suppose your discharge requirement, head requirement is only 10 meter, but now I want 9,000 LPM discharge. So rather than say following this pump characteristics, right, at the same RPM, if I'm rotating and only I'm throttling it, now second better option is don't throttle your pump, rather you reduce the speed of the pump. If you have variable speed drive attached with your pump, you can operate your pump at different RPM. So if I reduce the speed, if I rotate my speed at 85% of speed, rather than this blue, it will follow this green color. So your pump characteristics is this, and corresponding to 9,000 LPM, right, your operating point will come over here. Still you are much above your 10 meters of head required, right? And if you see the energy requirement or power requirement will be area under this curve. So whatever is represented by this red zone, right, this is typically a valve loss. So throttling pump, right, to set off our flow requirement is not the good option. So unless say we have provision to alter the speed of the pump, right? Say if your motor is coupled with the pump, and if it's a normal case, you can operate your pump at constant RPM. It's very difficult to change the speed. So in order to change the speed, motor has to be coupled with the variable speed drive, and depending upon your say speed requirement, right, I can operate the VSD and typical speed is obtained. So rather than going for throttling, I'll go for the variable speed drive or reducing the speed of my pump to get the same thing. Obviously, if your requirement is 9,000 LPM and about say 28 meter of head, I can't do, because say if you operate this 85% at 85% speed, as per this particular characteristics, your head will be about say 18 meter. You cannot get 28 meters of head. So in that case, at the cost of energy, I need to go for the other option, first option only. So depending upon how much is your head requirement, we can play with either say this flow regulation, either by throttle mechanism or by this VSD, variable speed drive mechanism. Here say this typically it gives the comparison. Now here say for the previous case, if what if you are operating your pump at 12,000 LPM to 6,000 LPM by throttle mechanism. So if you see, if you throttle, your pump efficiency has decreased from 86 to 69%. As I said, the part load efficiency of pump is poor. At the same time, if you see the motor efficiency is hardly affected. Your motor efficiency here, if you see at 12,000 it is 90%, and at 6,000 it is 89%, hardly 1% reduction in motor efficiency. So if I operate my pump at 12,000 LPM, I need about say 59.65 kilowatt of energy. And if my energy, if suppose my say this flow requirement is reduced to 8,000, and if you operate through your throttling mechanism, your total input power will be 55.61. So there is not much reduction in power consumption. However, say I have reduced my say flow rate or the flow requirement by almost say it is reduced 25%, right? More than that, it is 1/3. So 33%. Reduction in flow rate is 33%, wherein the input power is hardly reduced by 4%. So that is the case with your this performance with the throttling devices. If same say flow requirement is set off with the help of the variable speed drive, in that case I can see that my flow requirement, if it is 12,000, you need to operate your motor as 1450 RPM. If it is 8,000, I'll reduce the motor RPM, right, or pump RPM rather, to 1130, because both are coupled. So in that case, see, if you see your pump efficiency is hardly sacrificed. From 86, it has reduced only to 83%, 3% loss. Motor efficiency is almost same, and power requirement, if you see, it is reduced from 58 to 29. In earlier case, rather than 29, it was 55, right? But here the power requirement has gone down sizably, and this saving potential, if you see, it is about 50%. So there is a lot of saving, and say best way to judge whether we should go for this kind of change or not is the simple payback period. So obviously here, in order to say, as I said, any conservation is not at free of cost. If I want to go for this variable speed drive, right? If I want to change the pump speed, I need to go for the VFD, and this VSD is the additional component in my existing system. So you need to invest for VSD. Suppose a VSD cost is suppose a 5 lakh rupees, right? And your saving potential is almost of the tune of 50%. That is, you are saving 26 kilowatt. If you operate your pump for at least say 10 hours, you are saving 260 kilowatt hour multiplied by 5. So almost 25 into 5, 1250 rupees a day. So in a way, say if you compute your simple payback period, this simple payback period will be less than 1 year. So in a way, say whatever we invest, right, that investment is fruitful if the payback period is less than 4-5 years. So here energy saving opportunity in pump, that high efficiency pumps and fans. We similarly say if you talk of the fans, right, which handles air, but the principle is almost same. One is a compressible flow, other is incompressible. So in case of fan, we need to avoid the damper. So in case of pump, avoid the throttle. In case of fan, avoid the damper, and we can go for either the VSD, or you can even think of impeller trimming, change of the impeller, or proper size of the pump. Other three options through which we can save the energy, right? Sometimes it may happen that you already have a pump which is already purchased year back, and now your say requirement of flow requirement drastically reduces. So you thought that your requirement will be 12,000 LPM. And now you have come across that now you know that now my requirement will not go beyond 6,000 or 7,000, right? So in that case, rather than going for VFD, you can also think of either say impeller trimming or change of the impeller, because your requirement is fixed. Either you go for the new pump or you go for the proper size of the impeller. So in case of impeller trimming or the change of the impeller, your casing remains same. Only you are going for the say smaller diameter impeller, because your flow rate is proportional to diameter. So my flow rate has reduced. So say it is not good option to buy a pump, but to buy a new impeller. So you change the impeller of the smaller diameter. However, see, question is, or rather say, we cannot claim that the efficiency of the pump remains same even if we change the impeller. So if suppose the efficiency is 86% with the design impeller, if you are going for the reduced size impeller, that efficiency may drop to 75%, 76%. However, in comparison to the throttling, whatever say amount of electricity you are saving is much higher in case of change in impeller as well. So the best option is VSD, right? Variable speed drive. If your the flow requirement varies over the period of time, that is whether the daily variations or monthly variation, your flow requirement fluctuates, then in that case, rather than going for the change impeller, right, the better option is the variable speed drive. But if you have a pump, and rather than operating that pump at off design parameter by throttling it, it will be a better option to either go for the impeller trimming or change of impeller. These are the ways what we discuss, right? Impeller trimming, small impeller, smaller pump, or variable speed drive. Now see here, this is a very good comparison. See, as I said, say to control the flow rate by the speed control is better option in comparison to the throttling. That can be seen from here. We know, see, your flow rate is directly proportional to speed. Head is proportional to the square of the speed, and the power is proportional to the cube of the speed. So if there is the variation, or rather the reduction in 10% reduction, if I want in case of my flow rate, right? So 100 to 90%. So I need to reduce my speed of the pump also in the same fashion, that 10% reduction in the speed, which will reduce your head by 19% and power consumption by 28%. So if your head requirement is within the limit, right, it is better to operate your pump at lower speed, right, to get the better power. That is, your power saving is almost 28%. Similarly, if it is 30% reduction in your flow rate required, so your power saving is almost 66%. And if your flow rate requirement is 50%, right? So in that case, power saving is as high as 87%. So here you can see, so if you go for the throttling, you will be consuming the same power. But if you go for this reduction in the speed, your power reduction typically reduces to 87%. So there is huge potential as far as the operating in pump is concerned. So if you are owning a company and if you have a large number of pumps in your say plant, say in power plant also we have a lot many say feed pumps, right? So depending upon the fluctuations on the load requirement, if you throttle the pump, basically say that consumes a lot of energy. So this is a way by which we can conserve the energy. So variable speed drive, as I said, says saving potential is 10 to 70% and payback period is hardly say 1 year to 2 years. As far as the fan is concerned, say we need to also choose a particular fan for right application. If you see the efficiency range, right? So different pumps have different efficiency range. So open radial pump may give up to 60%, closed radial 65%, radial with the inducer diffuser 75%. If you use the backward curved vane, it is up to 80% and aerofoil shaft 90%. So we need to understand what kind of pump is really, what kind of fan is really required at the right application. So even if you choose a wrong one, right, so you'll jump into the lower efficiency and the higher energy consumption. So as far as your airflow control is concerned, we used many a times the damper. So if you use the damper, your power flow characteristics curve, right, will follow this blue line. So that means, see, in order to reduce the flow, the power consumed will be in accordance with this blue line. However, if I go with typically the variable speed drive, right, PIV control, then it will follow the last line. And you can see that if your flow requirement reduces to 50%, your energy requirement is drastically reduced. It is hardly say 15 to 18% of the whatever energy required, right, in case of the throttling. So throttling is never a better option. Rather, you can go for the inlet damper or inlet guide vane. There are various options available for controlling the airflow rate in case of the damper. But this speed drives, DC drive or variable speed drive mechanism is better as compared to the other. If you talk about the compressed air, so there are several facts about the compressed air. So compressed air is the costliest utility in any plant. Right, air is free, but compressed air is not. And the compressed air is considered to be colorless gold in the industry because we consume a lot of energy to compress the air. So we need to understand that say since you increase the pressure of air, there should not be a leakage. Ultimately, this leakage will result into a loss. So it is say envisages that 3 mm hole will result into 26 CFM leak, right? A given pressure, right? At a financial loss may be about say 2 lakh per year. So we need to also consider or to have some steps, right, to arrest the leakage. One is you can identify the leakage through the noise, right? So noise also identifies the leakage. We can conduct the leak test, right, at least once in a fortnight and record the quantum of leak area wise. So many a times it may happen that we cannot get rid of leakage, but if leakage is of the higher tune, we need to address those issues. We have to use the optimum nozzle size. So for different application or different machines, we need to have the different nozzles as well. So that ultimately mean to say that right pressure is to be used at right application. So it should not be like that you have the centralized compressor plant. You compress it to a maximum possible level or depending upon your application which consumes the maximum compressed air. And then wherever say lower pressure is required, we will depressurize the air. So you typically say we waste energy in compressing and decompressing if for the low pressure applications. So if my requirement is 100 psi and if you use 120 psi, you are consuming almost 10% more energy. So in industry, we need to segregate high pressure and low pressure compressed air requirements. And depending upon that, we need to think of having the centralization or centralized plan for compressing the air. So depending upon say requirement, right, you may segregate the application, you may segregate the say pressure range, and accordingly say we can go for that. We need to create the awareness program by displaying the posters on the leakage as well. And best possible option is to depute a service person, make him responsible for attending to all the leaks and ensure that almost zero leak of compressed air at any given point of time in the given industry. So by doing this, right, if you follow this step, at least we can conserve the energy saving up to 30%. And obviously the installation of variable frequency drive in compressor also will serve a purpose, because there also say if you have obviously the total power consumed by the compressor will be depending on the rotational speed as well. So depending upon your pressure and flow requirement, we can set off or we can set the limit, and the variable frequency drive may be used. Essentially, the centrifugal compressors are most efficient, but depending upon application, we need to use reciprocating and screw compressor as well. So straightaway comparison is, say if we have 7-bar application, typical reciprocating compressor will consume 16 kilowatt in comparison to centrifugal, which is 14, right? So there is less energy consumption in centrifugal compressor, and at lower pressure 10 bar it is 8.5. So these numbers are for 100 CFM capacity, and centrifugal compressors are expensive in cost, right? But their operating cost is less. So it's a trade-off between the say first cost or the initial cost and the operating cost. Reciprocating compressors require maintenance more in comparison to centrifugal compressor, whereas say no load power of reciprocating and screw compressor is up to 20 to 40%. Will be less in case of centrifugal. So depending upon the given application where your pressure requirement is more, obviously there is no choice other than reciprocating, but if your flow requirement is larger, you can go for centrifugal compressors. So energy saving opportunity in case of the compressors, consider the alternative to compressed air, minimize the compressed air leakage, regular compressor maintenance, proper type of air dryer, minimize the air pressure, etc. There are some alternative to compressed air. So typically say best way to conserve energy in case of compressed air is not to use the compressed air wherever it is not required. So if possible, say wherever we can serve the purpose by vacuum, use that in place of the compressor. You minimize the air pressure if at all used in cleaning purpose. Yeah, as I said, say your central plant may give 7 bar, but if 2 bar is required, so you should have separate application and separate say facility to generate 2 bar pressure. We'll go for the mechanical transport of material in place of pneumatic transport, right? In your cement industry, paper industry, etc., which will save up to 80%, and use electrical tools in place of pneumatic tools. So there are several say alternative of compressed air. Leakage is much important. So if you have line leakage, then it's a double loss that you lose your compressed air and at the same time you are using the additional energy to compress that particular air which is not being used. So here if you are if you see the comparison that at 3 bar pressure, if the hole size is 1 by 64 inch or 1 by 4 inch, right? So the amount of quantum of air leakage is 0.211 and 54 CFM respectively, which will ultimately result into the annual cost considering 8,000 hours of operation, 5 rupees as the cost of electricity. So 1 by 64 inch is 26 rupee, wherein say 1 by 4 inch leakage will result into more than 2 lakh rupees. So that gives you indication that the smaller leaks should not be pay much attention. 826 is a bigger amount, right? Even if you take care, if you just see the cost to benefit ratio, it will be negative in case of say 1 by 64 inch hole. But at same time, if we compare the same loss, if your pressure would have been 7 bar, right? That is, suppose say your application is at 3 bar, but you compress it up to 7 bar and then depressurize it to 3 bar, then even a single small hole of 1 by 4 inch will result into annual loss more than 7 lakh rupees. And sometimes say this cost may be more than the cost of compressor also. So operating cost sizably we can reduce if we are vigilant. And if we say look around and we reduce the leakages in case of the compressor. This is a way by which you can say calculate the leakages. What is the quantity, that is capacity in CFM multiplied by 1 time divided by the total time. And this leak test should have been performed at least say once in a week or once in if not once in a week, at least say once in a month, so that at least the leakages from the joint, flange, walls, etc. will be identified and we can take care of those leakages. As far as the industrial practice is concerned, 5% leakages is acceptable. But if you see in reality, these leakages are of the order of 20% to 50%. So we'll be required to address those issues, and this has to be reduced from 20 to 50% to 5 to 10%. Now, as far as the boilers are concerned, again say the boiler is also very important thermal utility, and in industry, say in be it chemical, mechanical or thermal power plant, these boilers are largely employed there. So they are used to convey the heat from different process application, and steam is commonly used as a heating medium. So we produce steam, and both in case of steam, both important parameters are temperature and pressure. So depending upon the application, we need to maintain those. Fuel used are mainly coal, oil, gas, biomass, etc. And fuel selection also typically depends on the availability and economics both. Sometimes at the means we sacrifice efficiency if your low grade fuel also is available in plenty at lower cost, right, in the nearby region. Paper industry also typically they use low cost fuel. As far as efficient steam utilization is concerned, we need to prevent the steam leakages. We need to provide the dry steam for the process. So it has to be say less moisture content, utilize steam at lowest pressure, proper insulation of the heat line, these pipelines. Condensate recovery is also important. We need to recover the flash stream, proper selection and maintenance of the steam trap, and proper sizing of the pipelines. So if you pay attention in this, so you can save the energy utilization, right? Typically it will reduce the steam consumption, and in turn say it will reduce the burden on the boiler and we can save a lot of fuel. So utilize steam at lowest pressure. So we from steam table we can conclude that we can show that the latent heat reduces as pressure increases, and latent heat is useful in heating process. So it is useful to keep the pressure as low as possible. However, temperature also drop when you lower your pressure. So in turns, as I said, we need to work in sync with temperature and pressure both, and depending upon that we need to find out at what temperature pressure we need to operate our boiler, depending upon the pressure loss and temperature loss in the line, right, for the final applications. Insulation is also important. So if you properly insulate the pipeline carrying the steam, we can also save a lot of money. So you just say an example is cited that 150 mm pipe at 300 degrees centigrade, considering ambient temperature to be 30. The heat loss is of the order of about 3,400 kilocalorie per meter per hour. If you go for the 25 mm insulation, it is reduces to 505, and go for the 100 mm insulation, it will be 191. So the size means the thickness of insulation, right, should be decided on the basis of your economic trade-off, that you want to reduce up to 191 or up to 232, right? So depending upon the say heat loss, if you go for suppose 25 mm, your total heat loss will be 505. If you go for the 100 mm, heat loss will be 191. So it's a 100 mm insulation obviously will require more money. The capital investment is much higher as compared to 25 mm insulation. On the other hand, say you are also saving as far as the heat is concerned of the order of tune of about suppose 300-350 kilocalorie per meter per hour, depending upon the number of operations or the uses of that particular for your utility, right? In a year, we can take the decision whether we should go for 50 mm or 100 mm. Obviously, take care of critical thickness in that case, right? Otherwise, it will go other way. Condensate recovery also will conserve the energy, say in case of boiler, because if you conserve the condensate, right, your boiler load will reduce. So steam condensate, after giving off heat in the process equipment, about 20 to 28%, it still remain with the condensate. Same condensate is used, right? So we need to provide less fuel in the boiler. So boiler water against needs treatment, and condensate is the pure water. So in other way, say it will also say reduces your in a way, say fresh requirement of water will also be reduced. So in that case, you are getting both the advantage that you save the energy in terms of in form of heat, and at the same time, say fresh water requirements also goes down. So efficient steam generation may be addressed by choice of fuel, boiler efficiency, boiler tuning, waste heat recovery possible, and water treatment as well. Choice of fuel, that we have different fuel, and different fuel gives you different energy. So some fuels are marked here. Say coal have actually coal has this heat value ranging from 3,000 to 6,000 kilocalorie, depending upon whether it is imported brown Australian coal or Indian coal or lignite. Furnace oil has about 10,500 kilocalorie per kg. Natural gas 8,000 to 9,000. Agriculture residue 3,000 to 4,000. So depending upon say natural, say this locally available energy source, right? We can think of the boiler design and the use of fuel typically for the given application. Boiler efficiency, this range is 65 to 85%, and this is very important parameter. So your coal consumption or the fuel consumption largely depends on the boiler efficiency. So one is taking care of the steam leakages and that all, right, will reduce the steam generation requirement. In turn, it will also reduce the fuel consumption. On the other hand, if we increase the efficiency, so your steam generation will be same, but it will be at with lesser fuel. So boiler efficiency ranges from 65 to 85%. Even say if you can increase the efficiency of the existing boiler by 1 to 2%, right, you can save a lot of fuel. So whenever say we analyze the boiler performance, So target is to increase the efficiency not by 5-10%, hardly say by 2 to 3%, because you cannot increase the boiler efficiency of the tune of 10%, 5%, etc. So here, say if I want to increase the boiler efficiency, right, I need to identify where actually losses are. So if I use the definition of efficiency as heat output versus heat input, probably I'll get no information because my output is in form of steam. So I'm measuring my steam flow rate and steam enthalpy. And vis-a-vis I'm using how the parameter, how much coal is or the fuel is used with what calorific value. So if you analyze your boiler efficiency with this direct method, probably will miss on the part where actually losses are happening. So indirect measurement method for boiler efficiency typically gives us an indication that yes, where are the losses, and if we address those losses, typically we can increase the efficiency. So these are the several losses in terms of flue gas loss, radiation loss, losses in unburned carbon, incomplete combustion, blowdown, etc. So and this gives the typically thermal efficiency level what we have discussed earlier. And as I said, if you use the indirect method, so rather than getting the efficiency by the direct efficiency formula, that output to input say ratio of output versus input, we use here the definition that how much where the losses are there, you quantify all the losses and subtract it from 100. So typically it will give the same efficiency. So in order to calculate dry flue gases, dry flue gas losses, which is the prominent loss, right? So we need to quantify two things. What is the CP value of dry flue gas and what is the mass of dry flue gas? So here say flue gas temperature is required MCP delta T. If you use this equation, so temperature difference between the flue gas and the ambient will be useful or will be required to calculate the loss, right, or the heat loss carried away by the dry flue gas. So obviously, see, it's a chemistry. Whenever you use any fuel, right? So fuel is comprised or consisting of carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, CHNS typically, and each say when say we combust the fuel, it reacts with the oxygen and it generates oxides along with typically say heat release. So carbon will be converted by reacting with oxygen, carbon dioxide. It gives us the all reactions are exothermic. So that from there, if I use the chemistry, I can evaluate from my fuel analysis, that is CHNS analysis of the fuel. I can get the information that how much theoretical air required to combust my 1 kg of fuel, right? But we know that say this stoichiometric air requirement is highly theoretical, and if you supply that much amount of oxygen, you will end up into incomplete combustion and a lot of carbon monoxide is generated. So we need to provide the excess air, right? Because theory is based on several assumptions. Your combustion chamber may not be 100% efficient. So thumb rule says, right, these are the numbers taken from the TARI handbook, that if you use coal, typically 25 to 60% of excess air is required. Depending upon type of coal, oil requires from 15 to 35% and gas required 10 to 20%. So your theoretical calculation should be supported along with this excess air calculation. So as far as theory is concerned, stoichiometric air requirement, right, that as I said, from your CHOS analysis of the fuel and using this equation, which is again taken from the TARI, I can get the theoretical air per kg of the fuel. So you end up with the stoichiometric air requirement, right, per kg of the fuel, and excess air may be evaluated. If you do not want to take those numbers which are given in the earlier table, you can also take or calculate the excess air on the basis of this particular equation, and from that I'll end up with the amount of carbon dioxide generated. I know oxygen, right? So that gives CO2 as a function of amount of oxygen. So basically this O2 you will get from your Orsat analysis, that flue gas analysis you need to do, which will give the amount of flue gases, right? It's a mixture of it gives what is the concentration of carbon dioxide, oxygen, sulfur dioxide, etc. And if you do not have the Orsat, you can take typically these numbers Again, reference is the TERI, that if you use say coal-fired boiler, 18.5% is maximum theoretical CO2. If it is oil-fired, it is 15%, gas-fired, it is 11%, and rest is nitrogen. So I can get my amount of oxygen, theoretical air is calculated with respect to the previous calculation, right? And MF is the amount of fuel, that how much fuel is burnt at what rate, and EA is the excess air. So if you use this equation, you will get the mass of air required to burn 1 kg of the fuel. And from this temperature of the flue gases and the room temperature, right? So inlet temperature, you will get the total heat loss in the difflue gases. So likewise, you can evaluate, say, for the given temperature of the difflue gases, for the given composition of your fuel, how much will be the heat carried away by the flue gases. So once you get this heat carried away by flue gases, I can also evaluate in terms of what is the percentage loss in the efficiency, right? I know what is the input, and unit will be same. So if you use this number vis-a-vis what is the total energy input is given to the system, right? So I can calculate how much is the percentage loss in the efficiency because of the heat carried away by the flue gases. Similarly, I can calculate the heat loss due to the moisture content in the fuel. So you find out from your moisture content apparatus that your coal contains how much percent, it will give in percentage, and finally I can convert into kg of fuel. So percentage is 5. I can say that 5 gram of this moisture content in 100 gram of the fuel, right? So this moisture content in the fuel is readily known to us. I know what is the mass of fuel, at what rate I am consuming my mass, right? And HO and HI, this enthalpy we may calculate on the basis of the temperature and pressure. So if you use this, you will get the amount, that how much heat is lost, right, in order to evaporate that particular fuel, because you have suppose a 5% of the moisture in the fuel. So when you heat this particular fuel, if you burn this fuel, because of the moisture present in the fuel, some heat will be used just to convert that particular moisture trapped in your fuel into the vapor, and that is a loss. So we need to identify that loss as well. Next loss is loss due to the burning of the hydrogen. Each fuel, right, as I said, it mainly consists of the C, H, and S, and as hydrogen burns, it is converted into water vapor, H2O. So obviously, as say moisture also typically say reduces, or some heat is lost in the moisture content in the fuel. Similarly, there is a loss because of the water generation, right? Water vapor generation because of the hydrogen burning. And we know, see this 1 kg of hydrogen, right? Actually, H plus O2, H plus half O2 will be H2O. So 1 plus 8 is equal to 9. So typically, say 8.937 kg of water is produced from burning 1 kg of hydrogen. So that is a multiplicative factor over here. So this H is the hydrogen content, MF is the mass of fuel used, and HO and HI is typically the enthalpy level at given pressure temperature. So LH is the amount of energy loss due to the moisture from the burning hydrogen. So if you evaluate this, and if you know total quantity of heat supplied in the boiler by MF into CV, I can also find out what is the percentage loss, right? Similarly, I can find out the percentage loss due to combustion in refuse. That is, this is very, very interesting. Many times what happens, the coal which we provide to the boiler, right, place on your grate of the boiler, remains unburnt, and it goes away with the fly ash. So it is the unburnt part of the fuel. So you need to do the ash analysis for that what is the content of your dry refuse, right? That if my ash is 1 kg, out of 1 kg, suppose 10 gram is the fresh fuel which is going away with this dry ash. So MDR is the dry refuse in terms of kg per kg of the fuel, right? MC is the unburned carbon in the refuse. That in the refuse, what is the percentage of the unburned carbon? And MF is the amount of fuel consumed, right, per typically say this per hour basis. And 7837 is the heat of formation of CO2 from carbon in terms of kilocalorie per kg. So we need to say multiply the 7837 over here. So that is typically say 1 kg of carbon say gives about 7837 kg of kilocalorie per kg of energy, right? When the carbon is converted into carbon dioxide. So this gives the amount of, or rather the quantification of the heat loss due to combustion in diffuse. Similarly, you can convert into percentage of loss in efficiency. Then there is sensible heat in bottom ash as well. That is, your bottom ash is at higher temperature. So suppose the air temperature is 30, bottom ash temperature is suppose 300 degrees centigrade. So it contains the heat and typically it is the heat loss. So again, it can be calculated in terms of the MCP delta T. So where mass is the multiplication of MBA into MF, where MBA is the bottom ash quantity in terms of kg per kg of fuel, and MF is the kg of fuel per hour. So if I multiply, I'll get the how much bottom ash is generated in one hour, and by MCP delta T, I'll get the heat loss right due to the sensible heat in bottom ash as well. There are some blowdown losses because we need to maintain the TDS level of the water. Same water if it is recirculated, right? So because of the deposition of salt, right, in the boiler tubes and that all, your typically this dissolved solid content increases. So practice in operating boiler is say in every hour we need to blow down some of the water and we need to replenish the same water. So you are blowing down the water at higher temperature and supplying the temperature water at room temperature. So typically say blowdown losses, suppose say I am removing say 100 liter of water every hour at 70 degrees centigrade and I am supplying the water at 30 degrees centigrade, right? So that 30 degrees temperature water is to be heated up to 70. So that MCP delta T, whatever is the difference, right, is your blowdown loss, and which is accounted as about say 2% of heat input. You can calculate your blowdown loss using this. Simply it is mass multiplied by the enthalpy difference of your blowdown water and enthalpy difference of the fresh water. There are some say radiation and convection losses as well, which are calculated with Stefan Boltzmann's equation. However, say we cannot get rid of the surface radiation losses and convection losses. Those are there, so rather say we will not address how these losses are to be reduced, but only it will quantify that what is the percentage of your efficiency reduction is because of the surface losses. So after getting that, you can add on all these losses. You subtract these losses from the heat input, right? And if you divide by the heat input, it will be thermal efficiency. You will get the same thermal efficiency by your input output model. Only say good part doing this analysis is you can know that say the quantification in each category, and if you find that yes, my losses are more, suppose say with reference to the reference case, I can address those issues and we can get rid of, or rather we can reduce these losses. Suppose say flue gas losses are more, then you can think of having better design of your air preheater, superheater and green economizer, which will reduce the losses in, or rather we are using the heat available with the flue gas, right, to generate some positive energy in case of the boiler. So here I'll end my presentation, and I'm sure that say some of the issues, say it's a very brief presentation. Those who wish to work on that, right, so you can find out the relevant material and work accordingly. So just insight is given by me, so that you can address really the conservation part and sustainability. Thank you.
Thank you
so
very
if you
much,
have,
participants.
we will take some questions from participants if they have.
Yes, participants, if you have any question, please ask.
Sir.
Yeah.
Sir, why do atomic energy is not so popular? What is reason behind?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's not like the energy, atomic energy is not popular. In some of the country, if you see the energy spectrum, right? In India, our nuclear share is 4%, right? But in developed countries, they still bang on this atomic energy. Only thing is radiation is the major issue, and unless we have a foolproof system and foolproof technology to avoid that. Second is we don't have much reserves. We really depend on the foreign country, right, on this particular nuclear fuel, and it is very difficult to get nuclear fuel. It is not as easy as getting coal. You have to have the nuclear deal with the countries, and since it is also being used for the destructive purpose, right? So it's very difficult to get the nuclear fuel as well. However, now as I discussed in my slide, now Indian government is also thinking that whatever new commissions will be there, at least some rather than going for 100% coal-based thermal power plant, at least say 25%, one in every 4 power plant, maybe say this nuclear, or rather say they will enhance the nuclear power generation capacity of existing plant as well. But main issue is with the security as well as the radiation.
No, thank you, sir. And sir, which is more easily cost effective electricity available from thermal plant or nuclear plants?
See, it's a tribal issue. See, if you use thermal power plant, right, the environmental issues or rather say degradation or carbon generation is much higher. For nuclear, the carbon emission is almost nil, right? So if you take in total, whatever effort you are putting at national level to reduce your carbon footprint, right? And the total say initial cost of nuclear based power generation. So in that case, I would say that nuclear will be much better option as compared to thermal.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Is there any other question from the participants? So I think there are no more questions. Yes, Mr. Sandeep, do you have any question?
Yes, sir. Actually, I have visited Kakrapar nuclear power station when I was in 12th class. So at that time, I heard a myth about the nuclear power station that because of radiation, the life of person who are working in nuclear power stations are very less. So what will you say about this myth?
Will you please repeat your question?
Sir, in nuclear power plants, the persons who are working over there, the life of that persons are very less comparatively to the normal person because of the radiation itself. So
obviously, see, obviously there is a threat of nuclear radiation in any nuclear power plant, right? But yes, now because of this mature new technology, that issue is addressed right now. See, if you compare to our power plant, right? If you just visit or just scan through the power plants, nuclear power plant of the developed countries, they are say much technologically advanced. So in that case, again, say if you compare in those countries also vis-a-vis your thermal power station, danger is still there, right? I don't deny. However, you can take some say measures, right, which will reduce the life threat.
Okay, sir.
Sir, there is a question in the chat box by Himanshu Patel. How to calculate carbon emission from the solid fuel?
Right. See, if you want to calculate carbon emission, you need to have the CHNS analysis of that particular fuel. So this is called typically the proximate analysis and ultimate analysis. So through ultimate analysis, you will have the carbon carbon, typically the carbon concentration in the given fuel. Suppose say your carbon is 11%. So that means if you take 1 kg of fuel, 11.011, right? 0.11 kg is, or typically 110 gram is the carbon. Now C plus O2 will give you CO2. So 1 kg of carbon plus 16 into 2, 32 kg of your oxygen ultimately gives 33 kg of CO2. Sorry, 12 plus 32, so it will be 44. Carbon mass is 12, oxygen is 16. So if you burn 12 kg of carbon, ultimately it will produce 44 kg of carbon dioxide straight away from your stoichiometric chemistry. So if you know what is the carbon concentration in the given fuel, you can calculate how much is the carbon generation. So that's where you can say. And thumb rule is, if you burn the coal, right, 1 kg of coal typically gives you 1 kg of CO2.
Okay, there is one more question from Braj Gohil. On a large scale, the solar energy adapted, but is there any environmental impact with the solar cell plate when recycled?
Yes, see, we generally say, if you see the typical life, right, for life of solar panel, it is estimated in between, somewhere in between 10 to 20 years. Barabar? And it, in comparison to what it generates, right, amount of electricity throughout its lifespan, and how much it is, say, once this solar panel is replaced, and once you say at the manufacturing stage as well as at the disposal end, right, how much carbon dioxide is emitted. Normally it is called life cycle analysis. So if you do the life cycle analysis of solar panel or solar power plant, even say in that case also, the carbon dioxide generation is much less. I'll give you a number. Say, as I said, if it is your coal-based power electricity generation, it is 1000 gram or 1 kg per unit. If it is solar generation, it is 100 grams. So it is almost 1/10. So ideally, we should not say that solar power generation or solar option does not pollute to the environment. It pollutes environment to a much lesser content.
Well, okay. On behalf of entire team, I thank you, sir, for a very informative session. We are all enriched with the knowledge on this area. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you for giving me an opportunity, and wish you all the best, all the participants, for your future endeavor. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, sir.
Participants, we are meeting at 1:30 for next session. Thank you all.